Good morning. This is Mike Houston with your Monday morning weather hazard briefing for southeast Idaho. Taking a look at the area fires across the region. We do have continue to see a number of fires here in the Central Mountains. The most active fire yesterday was the Shady Fire. It put off a pretty good plume of smoke that extended south and east through the Chalice, Mackey region. But otherwise, most of the fires were fairly well behaved across our area. Looking at satellite imagery early this morning, we continue to see a dry and stable northwest flow across the region, which will bring us a little bit of wind today. The forecast charts for this afternoon show very little change in that overall pattern for today. And we're looking at maximum temperatures throughout the Snake River Plain, generally in the lower 80s, mid 70s to lower 80s here in the Central Mountains, and upper 70s to lower 80s here across the southeast highlands. Minimum relative humidities generally running in the teens throughout the Snake River Plain, and teens and lower 20s here in the Central Mountains and southeast highlands. Taking a look at the depiction of wind gusts for this afternoon. With that flow aloft, we still expect to see some wind gusts surfacing here, especially within the Snake River Plain in the 20 to maybe 30 mile per hour range, but for the most part staying below red flag criteria for the region. Advancing our charts to Tuesday afternoon, we see a ridge of high pressure now beginning to expand across the western states. And as we advance to Wednesday, we see that solidly across the Great Basin here, with temperatures rising across the region back into the 90s here in the Snake River Plains, and upper 80s to lower 90s in the Central Mountains and southeast highlands. By Thursday, a weak Pacific disturbance rides in over the top of the ridge, producing showers and thunderstorm activity here, primarily across the Central Mountains and possibly here across the eastern highlands. This may be our next possible red flag event in terms of thunderstorm activity here Thursday afternoon. If we advance to Friday, that disturbance now pushing off east of the divide. There's still some lingering moisture and instability here along the Wyoming border, so we might actually see a thunderstorm or two in that general area. But for the most part, drier conditions beginning to spread in from the west as the high pressure ridge begins to expand across the Great Basin once again. Jumping ahead to Sunday, you can see that ridge fully in control of the region. We should see our warmest temperatures here on Sunday. I'll take a look at that in a minute. But I also wanted to point out the low pressure system beginning to develop off the northwest coast here, which will come into play early next week. High temperatures on Sunday, well into the 90s. I know this chart here doesn't show that. It's a little too subdued. But we do have some guidances pushing temperatures up near the century mark and some select valley locations. So Snake River Plain and some of these interior valleys of the Central Mountains closing in on the upper 90s, maybe even 100 degrees in some areas. But I guess the word hot comes to mind. By Monday afternoon, that low pressure system that I pointed out here a minute ago begins to make its way up into at least western Washington state. We may actually see there's some wind from that system or some moisture rotating up out of the south in a monsoon type of fetch, working its way into southeast Idaho. So we do have probably some weather to be looking at early next week. That's all we had here for you this morning. If you had any comments or questions, please give us a call here at the number on the screen. Thank you.